Every major continent in the world has a Bigfoot with a different name. In Australia, it's Yowie, it goes on forever. Each country has their own name for it. Each state in the United States, except for Hawaii and Rhode Island, has a Bigfoot. But the hoaxes come from every state in the Union, every country in the world, and I think it'll continue for as long as man's on Earth. In 1967, everybody looked at it. Even the University of British Columbia studied it. Patterson himself and a few others took the film around. Rene Dahinden took it to Russia. They studied it in Russia. And everyone come up with the same conclusions at the time, that they thought it was real.
In the dark forests of Oregon, a young autistic child forms a surprising friendship with the legendary Bigfoot. As winter battles against spring outside, this incredible tale is revealed, leaving everyone stunned. A video shows the child and Bigfoot together, sharing a bond that goes beyond words. Deep in the woods where shadows whisper, this unlikely friendship uncovers secrets long hidden. What mysteries does this forest hold where a child meets a legend? Tune in as we delve into the heart of this incredible story, seeking the truth behind this extraordinary friendship. Winter versus spring. Currently, the weather outside is highly unpredictable, compelling a stay indoors within the confines of a studio. There is a palpable tension between winter and spring, as if the two seasons are locked in a relentless battle. Strong winds whip through the air, accompanied by bouts of rain and unexpected snowfall. It seems as though spring is struggling, overwhelmed by the sudden and severe weather shifts. As the daylight wanes, the storm outside intensifies, casting shadows that dance menacingly across the room. In a recent video, the heartfelt sharing of the loss of a close friend resonated deeply with many. The overwhelming response was visible in over 2,000 comments that poured in, brimming with support, comforting words, and personal stories from others who have faced similar losses. This outpouring of empathy and solidarity was profoundly appreciated, offering solace and a sense of community during a time of profound grief. This story is shared by someone named Amy. Back in 1985, Amy and her husband bought a 20-acre piece of land in the Cascade Mountains of Oregon. The land was near a small town called Trail in the southwestern part of the state, close to Umpqua National Forest. This huge forest covers almost 1 million acres of wild nature in the Cascade Mountains, and the beautiful Rogue River runs through their property. It's also not far from Crater Lake National Park. The whole area is breathtaking, filled with lush ferns, small streams, giant trees, and lots of greenery. Just right for anyone who loves the outdoors. Amy and her husband were very happy with their new land. They had 3 children and wanted to give each one a part of the property so they could build their own homes nearby. Their kids were also excited about the idea of living close to each other in such a lovely place. In one corner of their 20-acre land, there was an old 2-story house that was in pretty bad shape. Even though it was run down, it still had working electricity and a functioning water well. They thought it would be perfect for their daughter, who had just gone through a divorce and was raising 2 kids, including a 5-year-old boy named Sage who had autism. This way, they could give her a home without the worry of a mortgage. Amy's husband put together a team of workers to handle the big renovations. He had enough skills to lead the project, and their sons joined to help on the weekends. Amy, on the other hand, took on the task of brightening up the inside, painting the walls, fixing trims, and adding her own style to make the old place feel new again. The renovations went smoothly, and soon the house began to look much better. However, one evening, while Amy was painting in the kitchen, she noticed something odd. A cool breeze passed through the room, making her shiver even though all the windows were shut. She shrugged it off, thinking maybe it was just her imagination. At that time, Amy was occupied. She was taking care of her 5-year-old grandson, Sage, who had autism. Every day after picking him up from school, she would bring him home. This way, she could continue her work while keeping an eye on him. They enjoyed their time together, and Sage had recently taken a strong liking to birds. To support this new interest, Amy's husband set up a few bird feeders outside. Sage loved to sit by the window or step outside to watch the birds. He always had a bird guidebook with him to match the birds he spotted to the pictures in the book. Taking photos of the birds became part of his routine, making bird watching his favorite activity. Afternoons at Amy's house seemed ordinary, but even regular days can bring surprises. The unseen visitor in Sage's backyard. One afternoon after picking up Sage from school, Amy returned home. She planned to get some work done but still keep Sage entertained. One of her sons was busy working upstairs while her husband was out picking up some supplies. With the house windows open, Amy sat at the front hall painting a door frame. Sage was outside watching birds, taking photos, and using his guidebook. While she was painting, Amy heard Sage talking. Thinking he was chatting to the birds like one would to a pet, she didn't pay much attention at first. A little while later, Sage came inside and asked for lunch. Amy agreed, and he made himself a peanut butter sandwich. He then asked if he could eat outside, and Amy said yes. Soon after he went back out, Amy heard him talking again. This time, she clearly heard him say, "We just moved here. Are you hungry?" This made her stop what she was doing and wonder whom he was speaking to. Amy quickly got up and looked out the window but saw no one. When Sage came back inside, she asked him again who he was speaking to. All he could mention was this gorilla man. Now, this might seem like an innocent story from a child's imagination, but what made Amy pause was that Sage wasn't the type to make up stories. Due to his autism, he was always straightforward and factual. Sage then asked for another sandwich, saying he wanted to give it to his new friend, leaving Amy even more puzzled. Amy and her friend weren't sure if he was serious or just hungry for another sandwich, but she decided to play along and offered him one. A week later, Amy was driving Sage back from school, heading to the same spot. As soon as they arrived, Sage jumped out of the car, saying he wanted to check if the gorilla man took the sandwich he had left. He ran quickly across the meadow and vanished into the woods. Amy watched for a while, then went inside. Not long after, Sage returned, out of breath, saying the sandwich was gone. Amy tried to gently explain that it could have been eaten by any animal since the woods were full of creatures. But Sage was sure it was the gorilla man because he found stones neatly arranged where the sandwich had been. Sage then asked for another sandwich, eager to continue this little exchange. Amy agreed, and Sage made a peanut butter sandwich and rushed back to the woods. He stayed there for a while, but when he came back home, he seemed upset. Amy immediately asked what had happened. Sage said he couldn't find his friend and the sandwich was still there, untouched. He also mentioned he took a couple of apples with him, which Amy hadn't known about. That evening, Amy sat down with her husband, feeling a little uneasy about the stories their son Sage had been telling. Sage had been talking a lot about a gorilla man and his secret meetings with this made-up character. Amy's husband didn't seem too worried, saying it was just Sage being creative and making up stories, but Amy wasn't convinced. She felt like her husband was brushing off her concerns too easily. She argued that it's important to pay attention to our instincts, especially when it comes to family. Sage's imaginary world might teach us more about him than we realize. Imaginary friends and child development. Kids often create imaginary friends for many different reasons. These invisible buddies can play a big role in their growth, giving them a safe place to work through feelings and try out new social behaviors. They also offer comfort and give kids a way to express themselves when they might not know how to say what they feel. So, playing with imaginary friends isn't just common, it's a healthy step in their development that helps them learn how to deal with problems and understand their emotions better. Research shows that this kind of imaginative play helps children build stronger social skills. It lets them practice talking, caring for others, and seeing things from different perspectives. These skills often lead to smoother social interactions as they grow older. Also, children with imaginary friends often show better language skills and tend to be more original in their thinking. But here's where it gets tricky. Parents need to keep an eye on how their child interacts with these imaginary friends. Most of the time, these made-up friendships are a good thing. However, if a child starts relying too much on them, especially if it means avoiding real friendships or if the pretend play causes a lot of anxiety, it might be a sign of a bigger issue. In those cases, getting some professional help could be useful. Supporting kids in their make-believe play is usually positive, but it's equally important to make sure they're also spending time in the real world and keeping up with their daily tasks. If Amy can support Sage's creativity while also encouraging him to stay connected with everyday life, she can help him grow emotionally and socially. By joining him in his pretend world from time to time, she not only respects his creativity, but also guides him as he learns how to balance fantasy and reality. A scruffy-looking person from the nearby property had been wandering onto their land and had spoken to Sage. Sage's husband responded calmly, understanding the worry. He decided to work upstairs for the week where he could keep an eye on Sage from the windows overlooking the yard. This made Sage feel much better, knowing her husband was making sure everything was okay. The next day, Sage was outside playing again. Amy, who had just finished her morning coffee, saw Sage coming into the house looking upset. Worried, she asked him if he was all right. Sage said he was sad because he hadn't seen his mysterious friend lately, even though he made a special drawing just for him. Amy listened as Sage explained his picture, which showed a big bushy brown figure with long arms and a tiny head. Next to it was a little child holding up a sandwich to the giant. The drawing surprised Amy because the figure didn't look like the man she had been worried about. In fact, it didn't remind her of any real person at all. It also didn't make her think of any mythical creatures, like Bigfoot, which she didn't believe in anyway. But what really puzzled her was how much care Sage put into the details. But that wasn't the most surprising part. As Amy looked at the drawing, she started to see the situation in a new way. It reminded her of the story from the children's book Where the Wild Things Are, where a boy goes on imaginary adventures with strange creatures. She began to think maybe Sage was just using his imagination to make up stories about his new friend. Convinced that Sage was just being creative and feeling comforted by her husband's earlier reassurance, she felt much calmer about it all. Just when things settle, life has a way of stirring up something new. A trail of solitude and mystery. Later that afternoon, Amy was busy fixing things around the house while Sage played outside and her husband kept working upstairs. Suddenly, Amy heard footsteps from the upper floor, and the sound of doors opening quickly caught her attention. She froze for a moment, wondering if something had gone wrong. Just before noon, on a cool day in autumn, an individual set out to explore a quiet path around Goose Lake. This trail, less frequented especially by those with young children, was rough and muddy. Thick trees surrounded the area, making navigation challenging. Most visitors preferred the open, well-trodden paths where families could easily stroll and converse. However, this secluded area seemed as if it had been hidden away for ages. As the explorer carefully moved along, mindful of each step to avoid slipping, an unusual sight caught their attention in the soft mud. There were tiny footprints, unmistakably those of a child. The explorer paused, scanning the surroundings for any accompanying larger footprints, a parent's or an older sibling's perhaps, but found none. These small, solitary tracks led into the woods and vanished near the lake's edge, stirring a sense of unease. Why would a child wander here alone? Kneeling for a closer examination, the prints appeared fresh, likely made only hours before. No other signs of presence were visible. The explorer took out their phone to snap some photos, perhaps to study them later for overlooked details. After standing up, filled with unease, they continued the walk, unable to shake off the lingering, strange feeling. The image of the tiny footprints haunted them long after the walk ended, leaving them with unresolved questions and a heavy heart as the quiet afternoon progressed. The following summer, the mystery of the footprints called them back to the lake. Arriving early in the afternoon, they found the northern side teeming with life. Families had set up camp. Children's laughter filled the air and the aroma of grilled food wafted around. It was a stark contrast to the quiet southern side where the prints were discovered. Opting for solitude, the explorer chose a remote walk-in campsite away from the bustling crowd. Surrounded by tall pine trees, the silence was profound, amplifying every natural sound. Despite spending the day fishing and enjoying the serenity, their gaze frequently drifted across the lake to the spot of the earlier discovery. As dusk approached, the sky shifted through colors, settling into darker tones. The surrounding forest seemed to embrace a mysterious air. A small fire crackled, providing warmth and comfort as the explorer prepared for the night. Suddenly, a high-pitched howl pierced the stillness unlike any known animal call. It was neither a coyote nor a wolf, and certainly not an owl. The sound had a peculiar rhythm, its pitches rising and falling abruptly. A chill ran through the explorer as they pondered the source of the noise. The wild notion of Bigfoot crossed their mind. Though it seemed far-fetched, the sound was undeniably strange and almost otherworldly, igniting a mix of fear and curiosity as the night enveloped the secluded lakeside. The quiet of the night brings its own stories, making the unseen feel close. Night at Goose Lake. The eerie howl echoed through the night once more, finding a chorus in the yips and cries of distant coyotes. These sounds blended into a haunting melody that filled the dark expanse around the lonely lake. Tall trees loomed as silent witnesses, casting long shadows under the dim light of the moon that reflected off the water's surface, lending the scene an otherworldly glow. With only a flashlight as a companion, one might click it on, scanning the dense forest, yet revealing nothing more than the ubiquitous trees and deeper darkness. This solitude, however, was not the most unsettling part of the night. As the howls and cries slowly diminished, a semblance of calm began to return. The mind, eager to dismiss the fears as mere figments of the imagination fueled by unknown animal sounds, sought refuge in the promise of sleep. But just on the edge of slumber, a different, softer noise arose, a rustling behind the tent, distinct and unnervingly close. In the stillness of the night, every rational explanation seemed to compete with the wild imaginings of what might be lurking just beyond the thin fabric. The rustling, neither loud nor aggressive, suggested the careful movements of something or someone exploring the vicinity. Thoughts fluttered to the possibility of it being a harmless raccoon or perhaps another small creature drawn by the scent of food. Yet the mind couldn't help but entertain the thought of larger, more formidable beings. With a cautious hand, the flashlight was retrieved and switched on, casting a circle of light through the fabric of the tent. The beam revealed nothing. No movement, no outlines, just the stillness outside. Despite the absence of visual confirmation, every heartbeat felt like a drumbeat, and the sounds of the night seemed to grow louder. Each leaf rustle or twig snap, a potential signal of an unseen presence nearby. It all came to an abrupt halt. The world around became enveloped in a heavy silence. There, in the stillness, every nerve was on edge, every sense heightened, waiting for a clue that never came. Silence reigned supreme, leaving nothing but the echo of a haunting howl and the memory of diminutive footprints discovered earlier. Doubt crept in, toying with the mind. Perhaps it was all a figment of an overactive imagination. However, this eerie calm was not the peak of the unsettling experience. The remainder of the night dissolved into a haze of vigilance punctuated by distant cries, the subtle rustling of leaves, and the occasional cracking of a branch. Each sound sent shivers down the spine, banishing sleep until the dawn's early light began to filter through the forest canopy. With the arrival of daylight, there was a swift gathering of belongings, driven by a desire to leave behind the now ominous surroundings. Upon reaching the trailhead and casting a final glance back at where the tiny prints had been, the ground appeared dry, blanketed with a thick layer of pine needles, erasing any evidence of the previous day's discoveries. Yet the memory of those prints lingered, stirring questions about the presence of a child in such solitude and the origins of the nocturnal noise. Perhaps everything experienced was merely a series of bizarre coincidences or the mind's illusions. Driving away, a lingering suspicion that there was something more, something concealed about that place, could not be shaken off. Whether to return to that particular side of Goose Lake remained uncertain. It seemed to exist in a slightly altered reality, one where normal explanations lost their grip. One certainty prevailed: the events of that night would not be easily forgotten. The haunting howl and the vision of solitary footprints remained vivid, serving as a reminder that some mysteries are better left untouched. What if the secrets of Goose Lake are meant to be uncovered? Like, comment, and subscribe to explore more mysteries.